Hello everyone and welcome to the Draft Series Race Hub, where we discuss the top news of the NASCAR NR2003 Draft Series. But since it's episode 1, we're going to discuss the history of the Draft Series and what kind of a community it's created. I'm here alongside my two co-hosts, Darian Arnsdorf and Rashya Mahendra.
Hello everyone.
Hello there.
First, let me clarify what this is. The NR2003 Draft Series is a racing simulation league that runs through the video game NASCAR Racing 2003 season, or NR2003. Our members take part by selecting a team, making paint schemes, and as we put on a full broadcast with record keeping, commentary, recording videos to YouTube, all that fun stuff, to the best of our abilities. But what makes the series stand out is the draft, which Darian, I believe you can tell us a little bit more about.
Yeah, so back in May of 2021, May or June, I can't remember, I got the idea off a YouTuber called Tomo F1, who did a thing where he drafted the F1 roster in a realistic sense to how it was at the time. I brought the idea to a NASCAR-style format, trying to go off of what he created for Formula One. Of course, it didn't work out that well. While we did get 5 seasons in, by the end of it, it just became a bit of a problem. The draft itself, in the original format, was each team had 3 cars. The worst teams in points was seeded at the first pick, similar to how the NFL does their picks. So I can't remember who exactly got the first pick, but I think it was like something like Hillman Racing. They got the first pick, and because I was trying to go off a realistic sense on like budgets and stuff like that, they didn't exactly get a great driver. The best drivers went later in the draft, which in hindsight was not a very smart move. But the way we're doing it now, each team has your correct number of cars, and instead of doing NFL style, because we were in the first season of the new draft series, we did a thing of a draft lottery. Each team would be seated in the lottery, and the top 28 picks from the lottery would be the top 28. The final 28 picks would be determined by the points order from the 1996 season. And that's how we got people like Dale Earnhardt going to Petty, Jeff Gordon going to Rouse, and stuff like that.
And let's go back in time to our first edition of it, which started in the year 2015. This is open to either one of you guys. What do you remember about those early seasons?
Just a lot of chaos, really. Like, especially at the beginning of it. The 2015 season, we didn't really have a lot of interest in the league. It wasn't until we got to the 2016 season, we were streaming it in a different server, an old offline league called MSCCT. We were streaming it there one day, and I think about 4 or 5 people saw it and had the idea to paint cars for it, and that's how we really got people invested into the league as a whole.
And I remember that because that was set. We had a lot of different debates throughout that entire time, and one of the first ones we had was, do we open this up for other people? Because other people were doing it with these other NRPG leagues where they could go and take control of a team, but ours had such a different way of user engagement compared to the rest of the leagues with the draft and how we were going about it.
Yeah, the draft is like, I'll be honest, it's nothing like revolutionary in terms of NRPGs. Plenty of leagues actually do utilize it. Do I know if they did it before or afterwards? I don't know. All I know is they did know that we were a thing. But I do remember like that was an issue for a little bit of time where like we didn't know like how to really get that engagement in here, like how it would work out, the draft and everything. I remember Rashya here was one of our first team owners, and I was off on the sidelines. Do you remember anything about that early bit, Rashya?
The early bit, not too much. I remember watching some races from, I think, 2016. Although at that time I wasn't a team owner yet. I was just watching because, well, I got bored. Because I was just I was just kind of spectating the series at first. I think I joined the series as an owner, early in 2017, I want to say.
Something around that time, you took over Rick Ware Racing not long
Yeah.
after BJ McLeod won the Daytona 500.
Yep.
And I remember he mentioned BJ McLeod Racing, and that reminds me, oh yes, he didn't just control the Cup team, but the Xfinity and the truck team, because after 2016 is when we started getting to heavy expansion. We added the lower series, and from what you remember, Darian, I think that was one of the big problems that we had with our league.
Yeah, we expanded too much too quickly because when you look at the driver rosters from later in that time, you see drivers like Sarah Cornett Ching and Tom Hessert III in the Cup Series. If you had told, I feel like most of us in that time, like who they were before Draft Series, I don't think any of us would have had a clue. So it was a thing of like bad or drivers in ARCA who never got a shot in the Cup Series, and drivers who were good in real life, but they were just never able to pick up the pace because it was so much going on. It was just too much at one time, and with us running 3, sometimes even 4 series, it just became a bit much.
Yeah, I remember that season. I think 2018, I think that was it. It was absolute mayhem, basically. Like especially in the Cup Series where there was, I think, 60 something entries.
66, I want to say it was.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure about 15 of those cars never actually made more than 3 races.
I think I still have that point sheets from there, and yeah, I can confirm there was a lot of red in a lot of those driver stats, because for those unfamiliar with names like we were talking about, such as Tom Hester and Sarah Cornett Ching, or might not be familiar with NASCAR and overall, this is the equivalent of hiring guys from like the single A leagues up in MLB, or college football guys taking the roles of starters like Tom Brady, and Tom Brady for some reason going back down to amateur football. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
to
it was.
say it was chaotic.
I'd call it almost like the Ottawa Senators expansion draft, where they basically got a bunch of guys who weren't like NHL quality and created a team that won 8 games in a 70 something game season. I think it was 9 actually, but yeah, it was a mess. Although I think part of the fun of the draft series is kind of making that alternate universe and kind of seeing how the machine kind of spits out results that that deviate from real life. Although I think
Yeah, I
2018 may have
remember.
taken it a bit too far.
Yeah, 2018 took it way too far. 2017 and 18 is when you really start to see it go downhill because we had Chase Elliott, a 2016 champion, go from 10 wins in 2016 to 2 top 5s in 2017. It was such a huge drop off. It was unbelievable at the time. And then we get to 2018, and you get probably the weirdest champion in the whole timeline, David Gilliland, in Premium Motorsports, winning the championship after Gilliland had been there since 2015. And at the start, Gilliland was like nothing really that special. And in 2015, he got 1 or 2 wins in 2016. And then 2017 and 18, it was just unbelievable the rise he had.
Yeah, and that was a really good story to follow along in the draft series. I remember doing it. I'm not just saying this because this was my team and I'm slightly biased, but no, as an actual viewer, like it was really fun to see this team go from a car that would finish like 30th every week to go contend for top 10s, then wins, and then secure the championship. But I know at the same time, like it's a very far deviation off the path, and while we like the deviation off the past because it's fun to explore, that's where the problem lies, is that when it becomes so far gone, it's almost no different than putting all the driver number combos in a blender.
It's basically like you're playing the game Auto Sim in a way, where it's just everything gets randomized to the extreme.
Yeah, Auto Sim is on
And
another level. That game pulls out some amazing combinations.
yeah, it just got to a point where at some point I don't think you could even call it a comparison to real life. Like, sure, you still had people like Jimmy Johnson in the 48, but at that point I think he was the only guy left in his
It
original
was
car.
him and Logano, I think.
No,
I don't think
Logano was in the
Logano ever
40.
moved it from the 22.
Logano got moved to the 40, I believe, in
Oh, right. He
2018.
did get moved in the last season.
There was one or two other guys who stayed the same. I'm trying to remember who the heck they were, though. Or at least were very
Bush was
close.
there at the start, but then he went down to Xfinity in 2019. Kyle Busch into 18 was there for a while.
Oh, yeah. And then he went to the 54, which technically was accurate, but that wasn't his primary ride.
He was full time.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so, yeah. So as all this chaos was unfolding, Rashya, what did you see? You knew some of the stuff behind the scenes, but what did you see predominantly as a viewer?
As a viewer, I think, especially from 2018, I think it was just kind of seeing how that bottom third of the field panned out. Because I didn't really have a car in the like complete gutter zone per se, but yeah. I think as someone who had a car, I think had one good car with McLeod, and then I had one mediocre car with Quapple. I think Sieg was in a third car, kind of in that in that mess, that qualifying mess. It was just interesting to see just kind of the different tiers of teams. It kind of felt like a deadlock for most of 2018. It honestly felt like the teams weren't moving around a lot. And also, I think the overexpansion also didn't help any of the new teams because they were mostly stuck trying to qualify.
I remember one of the big storylines, either in 2018 or 2019, I can't remember when it was, but one of the biggest storylines we had was the huge underdog win from Renault Sport Chevrolet at Kentucky with Matt Tifft winning. And I remember at the time, we had not seen like a midfield team win in a long time. Like, it was mainly just one of our top 4 or 5 teams winning.
If there's one thing that's realistic about the draft series is that Hendrick still rules everything.
They rule everything but never won a championship.
That is true, actually.
Wasn't Denny
You
Hamlin
would usually
their
see
lead
them
driver?
running, all in the top 5, but I don't think they ever were in that championship winning spot.
And wasn't
I'm
Denny
trying to
Hamlin
remember.
their lead driver for the longest time?
Yes.
Yep. And then Will Kimmel stole the 24 in 2019, and Hamlin went to the 99 of Starcom.
Well, yeah, no wonder Hendrick never won a championship when you have Denny Hamlin as the lead. Anything but a
As if his
championship.
replacement wasn't Will Kimmel. That truck championship was something else.
24 race season, and he won 10 races. Like, something like that is just unbelievable. I'm trying to remember who our champions were in the draft series. It was Ryan Newman in season 1, 2015, Chase Elliott, 2016. I think it was Kevin Harvick, 2017. Then we had David Gilliland in 2018, and then our final champion was Jeremy Clements. So in the end, we did have all 3 manufacturers win a championship. It just took 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
For all the zaniness of the series, for what it was, it did still have definitely a lot of its good memorable moments, that kind of carried on, at least in the common consciousness. One of the smaller things being our great luck with whenever a backmarker driver was in the top 10, because every single time they would crack the top 10, we would comment on it, and then they would wreck.
I remember the Las Vegas truck race in 2018, I think it was. I bring up Garrett Smithley moving into the top 10 of a 24 truck, and then not even 10 seconds later, he is in the wall wrecking with Trevor Bayne. It was unbelievable.
I wish I could recall. There were definitely more moments. I just cannot recall them off of the top of my head. But it was that kind of stuff which helped establish the draft series as like within the common usage in a lot of the NASCAR servers we're in, because a lot of people, even if they never watched one of the races, there's a good chunk of them that say they know what the draft series is.
I mean, it definitely helped that we like advertise it so much, which I feel like that's part of the reason it did kind of fade away, is too much interest in a way. Because we had a point in like 2019 or 2018 where like 6 people held a cup team and they were not active at all. And there was people who were active who were forced to deal with backmarket teams. It was like an over interest of the series in a way.
The series definitely kind of oversaturated itself through 2018.
Yeah.
I actually remember that draft. That draft was pretty wild.
Yeah, that was because there were a lot of guys. I think Isaac was one of them. It doesn't matter how many teams he went through, they always managed to be the back markers, and he never really had a full chance to engage as much as like the guys who owned Hendrick or any of the other bigger teams.
I mean, especially when you look at like someone like me, who for a while I did not own a team because I was dealing with all the AI teams. Eventually, I actually did take over BK Racing, and I turned that into a DEI satellite.
Yeah. Oh dear, we have to talk about that team.
AlphaTauri.
Oh yeah. We have to talk about the Red Bull deal.
The Red Bull deal was one of the dumbest things that came out of the whole thing. I feel like that's part of the reason why it got so stupid in 2018.
Yeah, I think that was the event that kind of started everyone's all the insanity that happened with team owners.
Because like,
that was definitely one of the first things.
This came about in a conversation in 2022 at like 3 a.m. one day. I think it was Michael, NASCAR Man, and myself. We were all talking about like really dumb stuff we could do, and eventually we get the bright idea of Dale Earnhardt Red Bull Incorporated and BK Racing being sold off because I wanted to keep BK Racing alive. Michael didn't. And so I'm like, okay, I'll buy the team and I'll turn it into a satellite team. And that opened the door for something like Renault Sport Chevrolet, Mercedes joining Chip Ganassi. So much stuff that happened in that time frame because of it. It just got a bit insane.
Oh yeah, I can't remember what team was Derby before it was Derby.
It was just DEI.
Oh, is it just DEI? Oh right, I forgot DEI was also a thing still.
Because we had JRM in 2016, but once we opened it up, NASCAR took the team and turned it back into DEI.
Yeah, and then we had the Red Bull deal, and then became Dale Earnhardt Red Bull Incorporated.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, yeah, they had such nice paint schemes, but it was the goofiest thing ever. And
No. I think one team beats them all. It's gotta be Mazda Levine. That team was an absolute mess.
Mazda Levine Wood Family Racing was the greatest thing to come out of the draft series in 2019.
I think that was
That
genuinely peak draft series right there.
that was quite possible. Not only was it extremely comical, the cars looked horrible, and the driving was even worse.
Yeah, that team was an experience.
I'm looking at the
I
sheet
felt
right
no
now.
more pity than the drivers who had to drive for that team.
It was Brandon Brown, Michael McDowell, and Bubba Wallace. There was exactly one top 10 through the entire field, and I'm pretty sure, let me see, it was at Kentucky.
Kentucky?
Okay then. That's like the last track I would expect something like that to happen, but yeah, sure.
And
Well,
then
last
at
track I
12th
would
in
have expected something
Minnesota.
like that to happen would be Kansas.
Actually,
12th in Minnesota makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Minnesota is such a fun track.
Oh yeah, that's a really good
I,
track.
I know I'm getting off topic, but Minnesota is genuinely one of my favorite tracks we had in the OG Draft Series.
Hmm.
And it's not even a real track. That's the even
Yeah,
better
it's a
thing.
fictional track. It's a very well done one, so.
Mm-hmm. And then I think also, like, I eventually do want to shift from the, oh my gosh, the first edition was so bad talk, but I remember one of the things was that I think we spent too much time trying to get a perfect racing product when,
Yep.
yeah, just trying to get, just kind of letting the races play out on their own. We were so concerned about constant action. We were kind of giving it the Marvel treatment.
Oh
And,
yeah. This reminds me of that one Las Vegas Xfinity race.
Which one?
It was the one where I think Gosselin went flying. That track setup was that was insane.
I think I
See,
still have
one
it.
of my favorite things, that came out of it, I know it like deteriorated so quickly, but it was Auto Club for quite a long time, where they would go 4 and 5 wide throughout the first 7 laps, and then you would have a 22 car pile up on lap 8.
Yeah, that sounds like Auto Club, to be fair.
But no, like for a long time, in like the 28, we were stuck on the 2018 season for like what, a year and a half, I think, 2 years,
Mhm.
and it was just like I at that point in time I was really not having fun with the series because I was so hell bent on getting the INIs working perfectly. And it was just burning me out so much so quickly of how many races we had to go through and how many tracks I had to test and how many different physics type I had to test. It was not fun to manage.
Yeah, I think I think it was 3 physics types for all 3 series. That probably didn't help either. So we kind of tripled the workload basically.
Ugh. Yeah, it was just it. When I tell you, like, I genuinely did not want to work on the draft series for a while, I mean it. It went to a point where it stopped being fun and it started being like, oh God, I have to work on this now.
Yeah, and it was all of that, everything we talked about, kind of just putting. That's what led to the decision to shut down that version of the draft series and just call.
Yeah, we did quite a
And
bit of a soft reset basically.
yeah,
Kind of rebooted it 20 something years back, 25 I think.
yeah, we decided we're gonna try this again. Just start over at this point. We kind of declared, yeah, too far gone. And me and Darian went back to the drawing board. We had some long discussions on it, and we finally settled on restarting the series in 1997, which is version 2, and hopefully, so far, it's been a little bit more better prepared.
I remember some nights we would spend working on that. I think we spent like one night, we started at like 10 p.m. Eastern and we didn't get off the call until like 3 or 4 some nights. Like it was, we were really trying to get this to work. We really wanted this to work because we loved working on this wholeheartedly for a long time. Like we started work on this back in middle 21. We didn't want it to fade away like so many other leagues had in four.
Yeah, actually, one last thing I'll say about the draft series. I remember that for some reason most NR leagues tended to die out at around 4 seasons. We managed to very reluctantly almost push it to 5 seasons, and then that's when we got back to 1997. And just remembering from what you were talking about, Darian, through that planning process, what would you say is probably like the best things we did to help make this new version of the draft series so much better?
I feel like the first thing that we did help with doing the draft, the inaugural draft, I feel was so much better in this than the inaugural draft in the original series because, like I mentioned earlier, we did a lottery style selection for the first 28 picks. It was completely random who got what. And so, whenever you get something like in the top three, we had Bodine Brothers Racing get the third pick. We had Bill Davis with the fourth pick. We had Diamond Ridge with the fifth pick. Those three teams got such great drivers in early in the draft. Like it's just more fun seeing like good drivers in weird places, I think.
And they also made a little bit more sense, I would say, that even though, yes, it's weird for them to be at these teams in general, it's like, it's technically not too far out of the equation to where you could still have some hope for them rather than just, oh, they're in a back marker, bye-bye, we'll see you never again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have Jeff Gordon at Roush Racing, you have Dale Earnhardt at Penske, or Petty Penske, sorry.
Yeah, there's still that element of creative
Creative
interpretation of
liberties.
history. We'll say that.
But like my team, Bill Davis Racing, we have Mark Martin and Jack Sprague, which like now, if you know anything about Bill Davis, if that was a driver lineup in like 2005, you would think they'd both be dead by now. But we're at a point where it's like there's still a chance for these teams that didn't have a great pick or have a good driver at a bad team. They can definitely turn it around very quickly, I think.
And I remember that draft because we and that turnaround was definitely something I very much remember. We're kind of seeing it play out right now through the season as we're going because we're
We're still pretty early into the season.
Yeah, 3 races in. We just finished up Richmond not long ago.
Mm-hmm. So, and from what it seems like, people are a lot more happy than they were compared to the first draft series.
Yeah, I mean, I think rebooting the series, we'll kind of do that by default almost, but I think so far I'm enjoying this version of the draft series quite a bit. So
there's not as much restrictions I think placed on everything because like qualifying isn't as much of a go fast and pray you get in. Like it wasn't skewed towards the best teams in the back markers. It's more fair to the whole field. And then when you look at the races, we are 3 races in. Our first 2 winners were complete underdogs. Like no one expected them to win. Ernie Irvin won the Daytona 500 for a revitalized Junior Johnson, and then Jeremy Mayfield won in the second Darrell Waltrip car. And then when you look at Richmond, for most of the race, Butch Gillen was leading the race with the Roush 16, which, yes, it's Roush, but it's Butch Gillen behind the wheel. I feel like you could almost classify that as an underdog win.
yeah, I mean, Gilliland in real life was more or less, I think, mostly a stuck to the regional series. I don't think he ever made that many starts in the big leagues.
He was mostly locked in the Winston West series. I think he was like a 1 or 2-time Winston West series champion or something along those lines.
Yeah, he was quite
But
successful in those regional series, but yeah.
yeah, but then again, Terry Labonte went on to win that race, the reigning champion. So who cares about your continuity?
Damn. Which, I mean, that kind of it's that nice. It's only 3 races, but it's still that nice balance of we get those underdog wins, stuff that we would never expect to see, but then we're going to get more of the familiar, like with how good Terry Labonte has done winning last week, and then we saw Dale Sr. doing really good. I believe he is second in points behind Derrike Cope of all guys. Why is Derrike Cope? Derrike Cope is at the top no matter what version of the draft series he's in.
Well, I mean, he's
Yeah,
in
that's
the
right.
3, so.
This is also true. And then in the original draft series, he was driving the Xfinity 20. So, yeah.
That's a whole nother can of worms. That team was that's another thing entirely.
We could probably talk about that in episode 2. That could be a whole ass episode.
That could be a whole episode. That team specifically, and I guess I'd say antics of that owner. That could be its own episode.
We'll have
Petty
2
Gibbs Racing and its consequences have been a disaster for the draft series.
We'll have 2 episodes side by side. One on the team of Petty Penske Enterprises, and the second one on a psychological evaluation of Ronnie Martin.
Yeah, I think we do need one on that guy.
Ronnie, if you're listening to this, we love you. Don't worry.
That is actually somehow one of the only ideas we allowed to carry over from version 1 to version 2 was Ronnie creating a terrible merger.
Look, I just found it funny. That's why I allowed it. We gotta have some comedy in the series, you know?
I don't think it'd be the draft series without some level of comedy.
Oh, you guys want to talk about comedy this year? Have you seen them try to do a pit stop?
Oh my goodness!
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
yeah.
The pit stops this season. I remember during the Daytona 500, we had our one and only caution, the first caution the whole year, because we didn't have any during the the duels. I think it was Joe Nemechek came out of the pits right in front of the 5 of Ron Hornaday Jr., and he ended up basically LePaging Hornaday, bringing out the only caution of the race. Rockingham, that was like 2 or 3 incidents involving that.
Every pit cycle had some sort of incident. That was a mess. Very messy
And then
race, that one.
Richmond, it's what costed Butch Gill in the win. The caution on lap 50 during the pit cycle after Gillen had already made a pit stop is what cost him the race.
Pit cycle, that incident completely turned the field upside down. That was
because
completely changed the dynamics.
You had 4 cars on the lead lap after that caution came out, and one of them was the 35.
Yeah, famously known for being a very good entry in NASCAR, the number 35 team.
Number 35 sponsored by Tabasco. Nothing bad ever happened with that car.
No, not at all. I just remember, because that incident led to more incidents, including, I believe it was the 40 of Todd Bodine just decided to turn right and plowed into the 24 as they were coming off a pit road.
I remember someone ran into the barrels in that race, if I'm not mistaken, as well. I feel like it might have been the 40. It was very bad.
And we're going into Atlanta next week, so what are we going to expect from there? More of the same?
I don't think it would be... I think we could probably count on some sort of incident in a pit cycle happening again.
Especially at a track like Atlanta, like that is
Yeah.
this can only go poorly.
And this is Atlanta before they do the reconfiguration. We're gonna keep with the original timeline on that one.
Yeah, this is the old oval, the original oval shape
Oh,
still.
it's the pill Atlanta.
The pill.
Yeah, I mean it is a
And that's what
pill
it's
shape.
called.
Yeah, that's
They
before they
call
added
it the
the
pill oval,
tri-oval.
so I mean technically it's a quad oval.
Oh yeah. It is a quad oval.
Oval is
And
oval. Who cares?
Yeah, oval is oval.
and speaking of that, that's going to be next week's race, which one of the things we've done this year is also been putting them on YouTube, which includes Atlanta and the races we've done so far. Have you? What do you think? What are you guys thinking of the idea just that all of these things are on YouTube and each week they're getting more and more stuff added to them to give you the idea that it's a broadcast?
I'm definitely enjoying it. I've always loved the idea of putting our work out there for people to see after the races have finished. Like, I've always loved this about NR leagues in general, and just
Yeah,
being able
I've
to be a
noticed.
part of
Yeah,
it in that way is just so much fun.
yeah, I've noticed quite a few leagues are starting to move to the broadcast role now, where where they record their races and make an edited broadcast of them onto YouTube.
Yeah, I kind of started doing the same with this league because, well, that's actually my real life job, working part time in a broadcast booth for ESPN Plus. I think I'm doxing myself. Sorry,
Oh dear.
but
Nice job.
I want to go and apply those skills that I've been learning to this broadcast because combining both a large passion for NASCAR and NR leagues with the stuff I've learned from broadcasting, it's helped make this series a lot more fun for me.
Aside from you need to search for 50 pictures from 1997.
Yes, I pulled all of them I went to the Wayback Machine, went to NASCAR's 1997 webpage, and that's where I got all the driver photos for the graphics. But you know what? Those graphics made their way into Richmond, and I am very happy with the results. So if there's anything you can get out of this little side tangent, just remember, if you put in a lot of hard work, eventually it's going to be complete, and you're going to like the result. It will be worth it.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Welcome back to the Draft Series Race Hub. We've got a bonus section here as we have a second guest, KIMBERLY KEALOHA. She's only recently started watching NASCAR, and she joined the Draft Series as a viewer because her friends are here, and what she listens to. Oh boy, it's been an experience for you, hasn't it, Kim?
Very chaotic. Just, oh my. So, when I first started joining you guys in your server, let's just say for the first hour and a half for the draft series that they did, I would just not join at all. Because I'm like, yeah, no, Michael's got this. I don't need to join, right? And then all of a sudden we just started fighting over my computer, and then he just forcefully made me join. So yeah, that's how I got started to like know how chaotic the group gets. And then the first race event that I joined, I thought the draft series video was chaotic. Oh my, the first race that I've joined was a little more chaotic, especially when it comes to the post-race discussions. Yeah, it's been wild.
And I just want to clarify that first event you were talking about, that was the draft itself, right?
Yes.
Okay. And The draft, of course, is where we got our namesake, the Draft Series, and kind of was what brought everybody together after we had the initial idea to reset the series and do a version 2 back in 1997, as we were talking about earlier. But could you elaborate what kind of chaotic, like, what were the best or craziest moments that you remember?
So definitely during the draft, and I want to say the first race, or it's one of the races, you guys kept clowning on Ronnie, I want to say his name is, because he just says the most hot, outrageous takes of things in general. And then, of course, for the fact that me and you are film majors, when his mic just decides to just end itself and the sound goes back and forth between the mic and his speakers and it just keeps getting worse and worse, the fact that everyone else in the server knew that something wrong with his mic and we didn't have to say anything about it, it was just so funny, and it got so bad to where y'all just have to just mute him and get him off the call. I was like, oh, this poor kid, but at the same time, you know what, that's kind of what the real friendships do. They clown on him and then they finally help him. Another crazy one is another dude on the server named Elko. He's kind of like Ronnie, except he's a little more mature and he doesn't have the usual equipment malfunctions. He just says like the most hot take opinions, the most popular ones. And yeah, it's funny how you guys clown on each other, but also at the same time just be friends. And then also, of course, you and Darian alone as a comedic duo, you guys basically have the same brain cell. You and Darian especially have the same humor. Like, how did y'all meet from just from online? I could never get friendships like this myself. You guys live on the opposite side of the freaking country, and you guys just somehow think the same thing at the same time. Like, man, how in the hell?
I honestly wish I knew, but I'm going to guess it's a lifelong obsession with NASCAR. I think that's a good starting point on our end.
I have friends who are also fans of Pokemon, and we never have the same humor, and we don't have the same brain cells. I think for you two, it's just luck.
It might honestly just be. Kind of answered this one a little bit already, but how is this group differing from other groups?
So with my other groups of friends, both past and present, they always tied back to either something film related or sports related. This group of people is so much different. It's broadcast and, well, one, it is sports, but also two, it's more on the broadcast side rather than the film side. And for me, that's actually a lot different, because I'm not a fan of broadcast, but I'm a fan of film. So it is a little bit different for me to be on something that's broadcasting related and also something that is motorsport related, because I'm usually in grappling sports. So this is completely different, but I'm honestly surprised how much fun you guys were. And in terms of chaoticness, this is the first group of people that I've met who were very chaotic to where I can even match the energy of them. Like, in my other friend groups, I'm just the one in the back just sitting out. And even though I'm kind of doing that with this friend group, I've been talking more, and I've only known them for like less than 6 months. This is the most this is the fast growing of not necessarily friendship, but like of me being involved in talks with strangers that I've never met. So yeah, that's different. And it's only been recently that some of my friend groups in film having chaotic, but it's definitely not as chaotic as this NASCAR group.
So you said that even though it's a different that it's definitely a different community than what you're used to. What would you say keeps bringing you back to these races?
Y'all's chaoticness and humor. Like, I live for the the humor and the chaoticness of it. Like, the humor that you guys have as a friend group, I wish I could find that in most of my other friend groups as well. Thankfully, in the film group, or in the film friend group, whatever it is, that I've been recently interacting more with, they have the same humor and a little bit of the same chaoticness, but this one is just outrageously high. And I'm all for it, and I love it. It's very enjoyable.
Well, thank you once again, Kimberly, for stopping on by and talking here with us on the Draft Series Race Hub. And we're going to go back to the regular booth with Darian and Rashya and finish out the rest of this episode. We're looking towards the future of this series. What do you guys want to see?
I mean, I kind of just want to see more of what we're already seeing, like just the fun nature of the series coming back to how it was back in the 2015-16 seasons. Just running the races, not taking it too seriously, just having fun. Like
that's kind of the main
so
point of it in the end. Is, if we're having fun, I think that's probably the best we can. Yeah. So the end goal of this is to have like just have a good time running this kind of thing with a bunch of friends and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited to see how this season pans out.
And yeah, we don't have exactly the largest community out there, and we're not the most active, but when we are together, we create some very interesting things. I'd say we're getting close to time actually for our show. I want to say thank you guys once again to our co-hosts, Darian Arnsdorf, Rashya Mahendra. Without these guys, without everybody else in this series, the Draft Series would not exist. It would just be a concept floating out in space. Thank you guys for making this community what it is. I'm Michael Paz for the NR2000 Draft Series. We're signing off. We'll see you next time.